Welcome to Naropa University and our Experience Naropa open house today on this beautiful Friday in September. My name is Kelly Watt, and I oversee the Office of Admissions and also Alumnus Relations here at Naropa University. I've been a part of this community for 12 years, and it is always an honor and a privilege to get to host these events that we've been doing now for, 12 years, give or take. So part of my role also at Naropa is that I've been tapped to oversee the 50th anniversary celebration. So Naropa was founded in 1974, which means we're coming up next year on our 50th anniversary. So it is a very exciting time to be a part of this community. And so for those of you that are joining us today that are considering being a part of Naropa and have perhaps researched a lot, or this might be your first time really joining us for any kind of event, we're so glad to have you no matter where you are in this journey and process. So our founding was by Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche back in 74. And we were really the first accredited university to bring contemplative education to the West. So this idea of Eastern and Western coming together. And as Trungpa said, the sparks will fly. We may see some sparks today, as often happens at any time there's a gathering at Naropa. And mindfulness is at the center of everything we do here. So I have the opportunity today to teach you the Naropa bow, which is a tradition that we do at Naropa that really is part of almost any community-wide event, or even something as small as a meeting between just two members of our community. So the bow is a tradition that I really love and has been just so central to my experience at Naropa. So I'm honored to get to share it with you today. So the first part of the Naropa bow, well, first of all, just to know, obviously, you don't have to bow. It's not a compulsory thing. I will say, to open your mind and hopefully some curiosity to what that bow experience might look like for you, especially when you're in the comfort of wherever you are joining us on Zoom today. So the first step of my bow that I teach is to bring your awareness inwards. So I like to close my eyes, whether you're seated or standing, wherever you are. Let's see if you can feel yourself in your seat, if your feet are touching the ground or floor. And just bring that awareness inside and take a moment to feel what's happening. If there is some tension being held anywhere, if you're feeling a bit nervous, as I am today, and if your body and your mind are perhaps being invited to occupy the same time and space in this present moment. The second step of the bow that I teach is to then bring that awareness outward into the actual space that you're in, and perhaps the people that you're sharing this time and space with. The idea of that we are in community together in this moment, and perhaps you have expectations that you're bringing to what this time will be. And also just to notice the space that you're in. It may be a very familiar one. It may be one that's new to you. What are the sensations that are happening around you? And then the third step of the bow is to take a moment. Straighten your back if you're able. Take a breath, and then we will all bend forward at the waist together. All right, welcome again, everyone. For those of you just joining us, that was the Naropa bow, which is a tradition and a marking of time and space as we enter into meetings and times together, whether they're really large community events at Naropa or very small ones. We typically begin and end any time in community classes as well with a bow. So I'm going to join us next. It will be President Chuck Leaf. So when I talked about our founder, Chögyam Trungpa, back in 1974 and the founding of Naropa, Charles Leaf has been a part of Naropa since its inception, and he has been president of Naropa since 2012. And I'm very happy that he's here and in this role as president as we enter into Naropa's 50th anniversary year next year in 2024. So So he is a lawyer and a founding member of Naropa's board of trustees. He's had a 28-year career. I don't know if that number needs to be updated, Chuck, but a 28-year career as a social entrepreneur, developing affordable housing, healthcare clinics, early childhood education centers, and businesses that are all in service to homelessness, low-income peoples, and communities. Chuck has then returned to Naropa, and his wife, Buddhist teacher Judy Leaf, also was leading Naropa from 1980 to 85, and their parents to two daughters, both of whom are Naropa graduates. So those ties run very deep with Chuck and his family. So I'd just like to welcome Chuck and thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Thanks, Kelly. I appreciate the time, and thanks to all of you 22 participants who joined us for this virtual open house. Really glad that you're here. It used to be unusual to be doing these things virtually, and now we're at a place where, as we started our fall semester, about 30% of you are online, or 30% of our students are actually online full-time. And as interesting is an increasing number of our incredible faculty are also now able to teach at Naropa without moving to Boulder, which is one obstacle that we were able to remove in order to attract wonderful faculty from around the country to be able to work both in the graduate and the undergraduate schools. And so while we are still great fans of on-campus residential learning for sure, we're also paying very close attention to the experience of virtual learners, and delighted that we're able to provide now multiple gateways for people, whether it's in graduate psychology or the Master of Divinity or writing and poetics. This fall, just starting a BA in art therapy online, next fall a BA in environmental studies online. And so we're expanding our both topics and the number of ways in which people can join us. As Kelly mentioned, we're moving toward our 50th anniversary. It sort of seems like it's been an endless conversation getting there. We're kind of officially launching the 50th next June, which would be the 50th summer after the starting in 1974, but we're doing a lot of work up to now to take a look at really what an anniversary ought to be, which is partially looking back. And I think it's important to know how this institution was founded. I gave a talk last week at our opening convocation, and when I do that, I always refer, because it's always within a couple of days of Dr. King's talk at the March on Washington in 1963, where he talked about a number of things, including the fierce urgency of now. And Naropa, it was 11 years later that we were founded, but it was really very much in the energy stream that was started in 1963, that then led to incredible turmoil in the country with, the tragedies of assassinations of Dr. King and Robert Kennedy and Malcolm X. And then led to, I think, a need, especially in higher education, to take a look at, are there different ways in which we could integrate mindfulness and compassion training, which was not something that was seen as the job, really, of the university, and integrated into a curriculum that a Western student was looking for in terms of their own personal and professional growth opportunities, their economic opportunities, and so on. And so when a bunch of teachers and therapists and artists and writers all came together in 1974 to try this out, and when suddenly 2,000 people showed up in Boulder when we expected or hoped for a couple of hundred, it at least seemed to be the universe saying that there was a value in at least playing out this experiment. And so if you'd asked me then, and I was a whole lot younger, I was involved with Naropa, but also involved with other things. If you'd asked me whether we'd be here for a 50th anniversary, I think the jury would have been out for sure. And on the other hand, I think inside of a few years, it became pretty clear that we had a model of education that made a lot of sense. And really, the way we measure our success is the success of our graduates and our alumnus. We have people around the world that are making extraordinary differences in a number of fields. People leave Naropa with degrees, but they are not necessarily tickets to specific career paths or jobs. They're really said once a long time ago, I gave a graduation talk before I was the president, and I said it felt more like this was a graduation diploma, was like a license to practice magic of some kind. But what that magic was is going to be completely up to the person holding the diploma at any given time. And the best thing that happens here is when we get stories back from our graduates about the difference that they're making in the world and how the Naropa time, whether it was 2 or 3 or 4 years, was so meaningful in terms of setting them out on their path. So I know this is for those of you that are on this call, this is very early in your exploration of Naropa and higher ed, and I'm really grateful that you're here. You're going to get an opportunity in a minute to hear from a wonderful faculty member, which will give you, I think, the best, better than me, will give you the best experience of what a Naropa journey might look like for you. And I welcome you, and thanks for spending some time with us.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Chuck. I love that idea of, license to practice magic. That's pretty fantastic. Yeah, so we're going to transition on to our sample class that we're having today, which is such a treat every time we get to do this, because I just think, I have not seen Jatan actually teach yet, and so I'm very excited that I get to be a part of it, and I get this little snippet of Naropa when I don't normally have that opportunity, and I work here. So for all of you that are here, this is a real treat today. So Jatan Bailey, let's see, I'm going to pull up your bio here now. Holds a doctorate in professional counseling and supervision. And the course that they're going to be teaching is the effects of substance abuse in our culture. So as it relates to the topic of this sample course presentation, Jatan has worked in substance abuse outpatient treatment centers for persons without housing. She has a range of counseling and evaluation experiences, and she had to do more than just incorporate and help a client understand the 12-step module in her role as a counselor. So many of those clients' lives were significantly impacted negatively by drugs and alcohol due to social problems. So addressing those social difficulties was crucial to many of those individuals' success throughout therapy. So as a result, she generally ties into social justice, which the textbook does not cover, right? There's a lot at Naropa that we cover that the textbook does not cover. So I love that part of your bio. And so I'm excited to have Jatan here, and thank you so much for joining us. I'll give you the floor.
Well, hello. Like you said before, my name is Jatan Bailey, and I have been at Naropa for approximately 2 years, and it's actually gone into my 3rd year. So it actually has been a joy, and I love the aspect of magic, and I feel a part of that magic every time I teach. As something new comes out that I can able to explore with students at Naropa that I was not able to do in a traditional realm. So that's the part of the magic that happens here, and as well as teaching. So, but a part of the Naropa process is the bow. But before and you're going to find that standard in all of your classes, a bow before the introduction of the lecture. But before I typically do a bow with the students, I like to dedicate the course to someone or something to set the stage of why we are bowing and why we should honor the process. So before I bow to you and before we bow to each other, I would like to dedicate this class to Peter Norman. But I want to share a picture of Peter Norman. You probably have seen this picture before because it's very iconic. So give me a few minutes so I can set up my screen. So this is 1968 Summer Olympics in Mexico City. Peter Norman is the Caucasian guy that's in this picture. And Peter Norman is probably best known as the 3rd athletic picture in the famous 1968 salute. He stood for human rights. And what you see right here is actually on all three participants are actually human rights badges. And he stood with Tommie Smith, Center, and John Carlos. And when John and Tommie approached Peter, they asked him a series of questions. They asked him, do you believe in human rights? And he said, yes. And then they asked him about his faith. And then they asked him, would he stand with them and wearing the badges? And I think it was, John said that when they approached Tommie, they thought that they were actually going to see fear. But what they saw in Tommie was pure love. And this was actually the last Olympics, despite receiving qualifying scores for the 1972 Olympics, that Peter would ever participate in. 32 years later, he was not welcomed back to the 2000 Summer Olympics in Australia. He was regarded as someone who did not honor the process of the Olympics for his country. He would never, ever have a lucrative career after this. Actually, when the 2000 Summer Olympics came to Sydney, he wasn't welcomed back. And if he did, he was asked to denounce that to the Australia committee. He would never denounce what he did in 1968. The United States Olympics heard about it and arranged for him, when they realized he wasn't welcome for this, they arranged for him to fly out to Sydney, where he was the guest honor for one of the track stars at the time, Michael Johnson. And when Michael Johnson saw him, he gave him a hug and told him that he was one of his heroes. And Michael Johnson was an African-American track star. John Carlos would later state that when we, meaning him and Carlos, which they were students at, I think, San Jose University. I may be saying that wrong, but I know they were university students in California, the university. And he said where they were getting beaten up, he said Peter was facing an entire country and suffering alone. He died in 2006, and Carlos and Smith both attended his funeral and were pallbearers. But Peter struggled with depression and alcoholism before he died in 2006 of a heart attack. And I wanted to say this because there's various reasons that people become addicted to drugs and alcohol. And a lot of times it has to do with trauma. Sometimes it doesn't. And in this particular case, I can imagine what he faced when he returned home and the opportunities that he lost because he would not denounce an action that he did for human rights. And I can't remember if it was Carlos or Smith, but in one of their autobiographies, they mentioned that this was not a Black Power salute. He said it was a human rights salute. And it was actually Peter Norman's idea that they put the gloves on, they share the gloves, one on the left and the one on the right, because they actually thought they had 2 sets of gloves, but they only realized later that they only had 1. So I dedicate this class to Peter Norman today, and all those people or individuals who suffered in silence and through trauma and found themselves in a web of confusion using substances such as alcohol, like Peter, to possibly deal with the unbearable. Thank you. And with that said, I would like to bow to each of you and salute Peter Norman today. So before I move forward, because the historical figure that I'm going to talk about is Frederick Douglass. But is there anyone would like to dedicate or make a dedication at this time? To someone, something, or a situation who has been struggling with addictions. Kelly, thank you. To the survivors of the Marshall Fire, struggling with trauma. And thank you for posting, but if you would like to speak, please do so. I would love to hear your voices. To my dad, who is struggling, I like to dedicate to a good friend who is currently going through several months of sober. Oh, someone said to my son who's struggling with addiction. Thank you. Thanks for the vulnerability. And thank you, Kelly, for telling me they can only post. Thank you all for posting. To my best friend who is struggling with to become sober. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. So moving along, I do want to discuss a historic figure, and that historic figure is Frederick Douglass. And so with Frederick Douglass, born in 1818 and died in 1895, he actually escaped from slavery, and he became internationally recognized as a speaker, author, newspaper editor, and a powerful social reformer. Douglass is perhaps mostly regarded for his high role in the emancipation of African slaves. But Frederick Douglass was the first prominent American to recover from alcohol use disorder. Douglass' alcoholism was triggered by the trauma he endured in slavery. So according to Douglass, he believed that alcohol was used to control the enslaved people. In his autobiography, Douglas stated that the enslaved would be abused Monday through Friday and given alcohol to drink on Saturday as medicine to the abuse. In a speech in Scotland in March of 1846, Douglas stated, when a slave was drunk, the slaveholder had no fear that he would plan an insurrection, no fear that he would escape to the north. It was the sober, thinking slave who was dangerous and needed vigilance of the slaveholder to keep him a slave. Speaking on his alcohol use, Douglas stated, I used to drink. I found in me all the characteristics leading to drunkenness. He went on to state, I knew what it was like to drink with all the passion of being drunk. Some of the slaves were not able to drink their share. I was able to drink my own and theirs. So Douglas realized that he had to make some changes. And he understood that the sober individual can make the most concrete decision. So unlike Douglas, or unlike many, he had to quit within. He had to make that personal decision. What was the bigger cause? What was going to make him the better human being? And in this incident, or in this place, I believe that Douglas discontinued because it was important for his culture. But he understood the trauma or the reason that alcohol was introduced to not only keep him enslaved in other ways, mind, body, soul, and spirit. So researchers have said when you're looking for addiction, when you're looking at addiction, especially within in the African American community, you must look at trauma first. And Douglas kind of even looked at that from his lens, that it was through this trauma that was causing, or the alcohol use was used to keep him and others enslaved in so many other ways. Now, in today's society, we're looking more in trauma more than we did before, a lot more. Do I think it's the cause of every reason for someone is addicted? That may be up to debate because people have different views and different opinions. But even when we go to today's society, when we look at the effects of substance abuse in today's culture, trauma is something that we're looking at more closely. And to expound on that, I sometimes get caught up with his name, but it's Gabor Mate. And he's a Canadian physician and author. And he's also an author of In the Realm of the Hungry Ghost, Close Encounters with Addiction. And Mate in this textbook is also a recommended textbook for this course. It's not required, but it is highly recommended. But Mate discusses the type of trauma suffered by persons with substance use disorder and how this affects the decision-making in later life. And so one thing I wanted to bring out after watching that is addiction attempts to solve a problem. And then going back to the story that I shared earlier about Frederick Douglass, when he said that the slave owners or slaveholders would make sure that or provide alcohol for the slaves on the weekends. That was an attempt to solve a problem. That's an attempt to make sure that there's no conversation of escape, insurrections, or anything else. So that was used as a tool to help them solve a potential problem that they foresee as a problem, as losing what they found to be valuable as having the human capital. And what Frederick Douglass had to come to terms with, as this video shared, is that he had to reconnect to who he was. And when you think about that reconnection and those survival skills and so forth, I think about Abraham Maslow. And when I work with the homeless population, one of the things that we closely looked at before I could move forward into doing other types of work is to look at Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And that was the basis, was there shelter? And then did that person feel safe? Then was there a feeling of belongingness? And then love and esteem and acceptance. And then you're finally your self-actualization. In my personal opinion, sometimes it's very hard for individuals to reach because all those other needs are not being met. And so when we look at it, we do have to look at the base of an individual. What is the root? What are they missing? And what has been the cause? Like I said, when I first started out, we really didn't talk about trauma, but in today's society, we're looking more into it. And even when I go back and look at from my historical roots and looking at Frederick Douglass' story, even Peter Norman's story, they're all coming from a place of being Peter being rejected when he went home, when he thought he did something right. And then Frederick Douglass being being a product of slavery, and this was part of control. And unfortunately, Peter wasn't able to work himself out, whereas Frederick Douglass was able to do so. And then when we look at addiction, again, there's many roads to recovery for individuals. So as clinicians, when we get into this field, and it's one thing that I love to express to the students, is that we often have to understand what's good for one person may not be for the next. My father, for example, did not understand or probably knew how to access resources. He was a weekend alcoholic, but he had to make a decision to quit. And that decision likely was hard without any formal support, but he had to make that decision. And it probably was physically and mentally draining that he had to do it alone in what we call cold turkey. But I wanted to acknowledge something that was written. It was said, Jatan, I am thankful to hear what I have been saying. Jatan, I'm thankful to hear what I have been saying for a while. Being brought up in this conversation, would you be open to working together for the healing of fellow beings? I would love to have a more conversation with you about this. So I initially, what would traditionally happen, I would open up the class for conversation. And I thought that we were going to be able to do that. And I should have asked, and I didn't. And so that would have been the next stage that I would have gone into. And then after the conversation, typically, I would have someone come into my class who lived an experience. For example, this would be the beginning of how I would start my class. Then I will open it up for conversation. And then my friend David Battle is going to be a guest speaker, where he was incarcerated. He was a football player, collegiate football player for Division I university, and he found himself addicted, selling drugs in prison. Now he's a substance abuse counselor. And so and then once we meet for the in-person intensive, I go more in the techniques of like motivational interviewing. And then I also incorporate music into the process too. And because that allows for me to have like a deeper conversation with the students. So I did thought I was going to have an opportunity for questions and answers. So this is where my presentation is. But I wanted to leave my information, my email information, if that's okay, if anybody has any questions. Ellie, do you have any questions for me?
I do not teach at Naropa. I'm a staff member and a super fan. I did just share in the chat though, and for my support staff, you're welcome to put the spotlight back on me if you like, or dual spotlight. I think that's a thing too. It's been a minute since I've been on a Zoom webinar. That Gabor Mate was here at Naropa in 2016. And so there's just a brief excerpt video that I just shared in the chat as well. And I'm happy to share my email as well as the general admissions email inbox at Naropa as well. So I'm at kwatt@naropa.edu. And if one of my fellow staffers wouldn't mind dropping the admissions email into that chat as well. Jatan, that Gabor Mate video and his explanation of trauma versus traumatic was really powerful. It's interesting because I think at Naropa, like when I'm here and I'm immersed in all of this, and I also, there's things that show up every day that hit me in a very personal way. Hit is maybe a strong word, but it wasn't too strong for today, I think, and for what you shared. And it just, this example of what you did, Jatan, is just to show like a tiny little snippet of what it's like. I think the classes and the format that Jatan teaches in the mindfulness-based transpersonal counseling program, those class formats are usually meet once a week for a 3-hour block of time. There's really some intensive and intimate work, I think, that can happen there, right? Mm-hmm. And that is so powerful. And I think that is where these seeds of transformation start, right? So this is just a very small taste of what it would be like to actually be here as a student, and to have that kind of discussion. And as our president, Charles Leaf, mentioned when he was speaking at the very beginning, he said, I think 30%, but I actually think it's more like 40% of the students that are here are online students. They're either low residency or they're fully online, right? So whether you're here as an online student or you're here in person attending classes in Boulder, right? Whatever way you can access this work, I think is important to do, right? And if you're being drawn to Naropa, as so many people are, with this idea of just this personal pull, right? Like what that looks like. I think when we talk about contemplative education at Naropa, to try to explain that to someone, it's such a personal thing of what that means to each individual, whether you're a student here, a staff member, or as you're teaching it, right? As you're living this work, I'm sure, Jatan, in what you do. So it's a very powerful thing, and it's not something that's meant for everybody, right? Or like right for everybody. It's not a cookie cutter place and program. And at the same time, I think for the individuals who are open to this work and wanting to know themselves in this really deep way, and to have that opportunity, and then to go out and take that work and change the world, there is no other place that does what we do. And that is why I am still here And I'm never going to leave probably because I think it's an incredibly powerful experience. So Chetan,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here with us today. And if you have any other cool content you want to drop in the chat, please do.
And I want to say this, I do not feel like I'm an expert in substance abuse. I want to say that too. Matter of fact, I taught this, I I try to get away from substance abuse, but it finds me. But when I was asked to teach this class, I taught it with Joe Soma when I first came here, and I was delighted because our skill set kind of worked because I came more from a social justice lens from it because of the population I work with. And so when I found out I was going to be teaching it alone, I got really scared. But Joe has been some of my has agreed to be guest speaker sometimes for me because he provides a lens of substance abuse that I don't have. And in my class, this particular class, you're going to find a wealth of individuals who I know personally who comes in to help me out with this. And so the students get to hear people from all over the United States who I feel is more and more versed in substance abuse than I am. But from the social justice lens of it, that's a part that I have looked very closely into because of my previous work with individuals without housing who's addicted to various substances.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions that participants would like to drop into the chat for our presenter today? We'd be happy to look at those. Or if you just have comments about what this is maybe bringing up for you. Again, it's a safe space to share. It's about as safe as it gets when you're on Zoom, right? In some ways. So I'll pause for just a moment to see if anyone wants to add anything to the chat and share questions or comments. Okay. There we go. We do have one. The story you shared and the vulnerability you started out with was very powerful. Thank you for that. And appreciating the video and Gabriel Mate's insight into addiction and the great illustrations. They were very sweet, aren't they? I enjoyed them. And also they stirred a lot, I think, for me as I was watching them. Yeah, vulnerability, I think, is a real key to the work that we do at Naropa. So I thank you for bringing that up for that commenter that shared to the panelists here. I think my latest thing that I like to say about what Naropa does is that we teach how to be comfortable with discomfort, how to be with discomfort and in places that can feel hard and scary. Those really kind of deep places, those shadow sides. So thank you for that. Oh, and that the video was heartening, indeed. Okay, excellent. Thank you again, Chetan Bailey, for joining us today from the Mindfulness-Based Transpersonal Counseling Program. Again, this is just a snippet of what all of our fantastic faculty do here every single day. It's amazing.
And you're welcome to email me. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay, we're going to transition into the next section. So that was like our main program with our sample class. So we have now a series of open sessions that'll start at 1 o'clock. So here in 6 minutes, so 1 o'clock Mountain Time. So they're going to post the schedule up here, and then you can click on the link and find the schedule of events for the day. So for those of you that are interested in our bachelor's degree programs, whether they're online or here on campus, right, those undergrad programs, there's information from financial aid and also from academic advising. Please hop into those as you're able to. Those are interactive, right? You'll be on just normal, regular Zoom link and can raise your hand and turn your camera and do all the things. For those interested in our master's degree programs, our graduate level, right, we have information about credentialing, so things like licensure for those interested in clinical mental health counseling, clinical placement. We also have financial aid information for you as well. And then kind of more broadly, we have information about career advising, internships, field placement that's being offered by our Office of Career and Life Development. All of those sessions, very valuable. I totally encourage you, as you're able to drop in, you don't have to stay for a whole thing. You can hop around and check it out to get a sense of like what kind of support to actually get you here, right? And help you be successful while you're at Naropa. Obviously, financial aid is a huge part of that, career and life, credentialing after you graduate. So also, if you have any questions, period, about pretty much anything, please email the Office of Admissions at admissions@naropa.edu. We are really, I hope, the front door for you to be able to come to Naropa and just start to get a sense of like what this could look like for you, to have a chance to actually talk with one of our admissions counselors one-on-one, to attend a group info session. We are here to really put you in touch with all of the things that you would need to know if this is the right path for you, if this is the right place, right? And if so, to help you make that informed decision and to support you in your journey to come to Naropa. That is what we do every single day. So please contact us with those questions, comments, anything that's coming up for you. I'll put our folks on the spot, but I'm curious if we could put the scheduling link for our scheduling software to help come to either meet with an admissions counselor online or over the phone, to also schedule a campus tour, that type of thing. Look at that. There's a campus tour link on it. They're always on it. So encourage you to check it out. For those of you that cannot come to Boulder, which is a lot of people, please check out the virtual campus tour. It's on a lot of pages on our website, but it's on the very homepage of naropa.edu at the very bottom. It is a fantastic campus tour that we worked very hard on, and it only took a pandemic for us to get it. So please enjoy that piece. It's really fantastic. You get to see spaces on that virtual campus tour that you really don't see on the regular campus tour even. So do both if you can. So definitely encourage you to do that. And yes, to get a chance to meet with one of our admissions counselors, we work with those that are interested in pursuing our degree programs, whether it's graduate or undergraduate. Please click on that link and see what's available. We schedule a few weeks out typically. There's stuff that's weekly. Find something that works with your schedule. And if you can't find something, again, email us at admissions@naropa.edu. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I'm going to give you a minute to stretch, do what you need to do. And then again, please join one of those open sessions. We would love to have you there, to have you interact and get some questions answered, or be a fly on the wall, as you can do in Zoom. So those are generally not more, I think they're pretty interactive. So it's a chance for you to actually get to chat and get your questions answered with the experts in those areas. So please do join us for that. We're going to end our time together, as we always do in community, with a bow. I invite you, whether you joined late, you've been here for the whole time because you're a rock star, either way, you're a rock star either way, right? To join me in a bow, to just take a moment and acknowledging and respecting the time that we were able to share together today. So thank you so much for being here. All right. Thanks again, everybody. I hope you have a beautiful Friday and the rest of your weekend, and to have you here in September, my favorite month. It's a good time to be exploring and open and curious. So thank you so much. Oh, look at all those wonderful thank yous. It's so good to hear from you all. Anyway, I so appreciate you all being here today. And again, click on that open session link, join one of those for us. We'd love to see you. Set up a time to come and visit us on campus, schedule a time to chat with one of our admissions counselors. We would love, love, love to have you and to get to hear about you and your story. That's the only thing about these open houses virtually, is that they are very one-sided, which is not typically how we do things at Naropa. So we would love to be in conversation with you. So yeah, thank you. I just saw a comment to the panelists here. That's good energy. It is wonderful energy at Naropa. And I'm so excited to be back with you all today. So wonderful. Thank you so much. I think we'll stay on for just another minute to officially end our time. But otherwise, please click off and go find a place to hang out and join us again in a different format. So thank you, everybody.